I do really love this one. Following on from what Luke said, look at the sensory sensitivity. So to me, if we're actually looking at diagnostic criteria, in some ways I think the first thing we might want to look for is different ways of perceiving the world in terms of senses. And although Luke said about the walk, sometimes for people like myself with dyspraxia, that's a hotel we were in last night. It was dyspraxic, unfriendly, and I said to Carly, before I'd even have a drink, I will need help getting back to my room tonight. And because the banisters were really beautiful, but they were silver, and then there was a gap, and then there was another bit that was silver, and then there was like a little step just before going into my room, and I just, whoa. So I think, to me, that's quite an interesting place to start with how people perceive the world, how it impacts on their senses, and that supports it. Sadly, the next one, bullying, and this is self-reported bullying, bullying that starts at school and goes on and on and on. And totally echo what Luke said, you know, this has got to stop, this is totally outrageous. So sadly, and with the children, the bullying doesn't seem to be getting any better. Neil Humphreys at Manchester University is doing a lot of work in schools, and he's getting very similar figures to this. I do diagnose, that's what I do. Back in the 70s when I qualified, bearing in mind it was hippie era and so on, I refused to diagnose. I said that everyone should be treated as an individual and their needs should be met and we shouldn't label anybody. And there was this group of people that, because I was refusing to diagnose, and I deeply apologised to people in the room for doing this, who weren't getting their needs met. And so I turned full circle and said the only way these people are going to get their needs met is if I diagnose. So I won't accept this child at this school unless you've got a bit of paper. So I'll give people a bit of paper, and I don't like it. I do also look at other things. Sadly, as Luke said, there should be no reason, but there is an increased prevalence of anxiety, depression, I think eating disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder. We had a discussion recently at our post-diagnostic support group about post-traumatic stress disorder. Catatonia, where quite often people's bodies literally shut down, their motor movements deteriorate, can look a bit like Parkinson's. I've also seen high prevalence rates of migraines, hypermobility syndrome, particularly with dyspraxia where joints come out. Thankfully I don't have that. I did an even worse mess than I had. Fibromyalgia, or as some people prefer it, chronic pain syndrome. Interestingly, went to a talk about increased heart and cardiovascular disease in people with dyspraxia. And I asked, was that seen as part of the dyspraxia, or was it because we do so badly at PE that we avoid exercise later on? And that appears to be the case because children's experience as dyspraxics, and you in the room will know that PE, sewing, cooking, nightmare. Irritable bowel syndrome, sleep problems, not producing enough melatonin, and pain, interesting relationship of pain and sensory sensitivity. People who can walk around with ear infections that should be crippling them, or broken limbs. Equally other people who just the slightest touch is painful. I also assess for other developmental difference, including attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, dyspraxia. I can't officially do dyslexia, but I can make the beginning screens for those, and I can begin the process of sensory processing. Again, apologies for the word disorder, but I'm trying to legitimise something that the public don't understand and professionals don't understand. This is a diagram some of you may have seen. Anyone who can tell you it's clear-cut and it's easy to diagnose one condition versus another doesn't know what they're talking about. It's incredibly complex. How severe is it? And I always say, I'm sorry, I can't answer that. The way I answer that is at the NAS conference there was a presentation from a Belgian psychologist who's way ahead of the field. And he measures it on happiness as an outcome measure. And he gave a group of professionals 2 case studies. One, a gentleman who had a job, his own flat, and was earning quite a lot of money. And another was a person who was spending most of their time in their room, still living at home at the age of 30, no job. And they asked the person, the group of professionals, which is the most successful outcome. And everyone went for the person who had the job and the house and the money. And then he said, which one of those do you think is suicidal? And it was the one with the job and the house and the money. So how is that? So I just don't do severe, mild, it's nonsense. Then a lot of people will say, and I'm going to give you some words because I think it's more important that you hear their words than mine, that people had an understanding, an explanation for how life had been, how life was. Relief, happiness, thank goodness now I know. Then some people were ambivalent, they weren't sure. Lots of people saying, why did this not happen sooner? But again, not always. I had a man I assessed, diagnosed at 66, and I said, yes it is. And he said, thank you very much, and got up and went from the room. But I sort of tried to say, no, hold on a minute, post-diagnostic support, etc. He said, no, that's all I wanted to know, thanks. And off he went, and I've never seen him again, I'm assuming that's all right. People who said, I knew, I always knew, thank you for confirming it. Then people had hope for the future, and some people said, maybe now interventions can be tailored for me. And then some people being totally overwhelmed and picking up what Dream said, an overwhelming physiological feeling, an overwhelming emotional feeling, but maybe they couldn't label it, they couldn't describe it. I had an understanding of why my life has been like it has. It will bring me closure and happier inside. I need to think about this new identity and read about it. My wife said she feels like she is losing me and my depression is getting worse. I want to know me and my emotions. I don't know, I'm not happy or sad. I wish I could have been diagnosed years ago instead of being left alone. I've been lost in the fog of autism, especially as a child. It's a relief that someone cares. So I'm getting really emotional now because I can remember a lot of these people. I've been ignored, and even when I threatened to take my life, I still felt ignored. I don't want to die, I want a life. It's just another label. It's someone's descriptions of not fitting into someone's normality. Why should I fit into your normality? I particularly like that one. That's an expansive question. I don't know how to respond. It's too big a question. It's like a burden has lifted off me. It's not my fault. It's mixed. It's a relief to know. There is a logic now and some answers. It would be an explanation to other people. I don't do these things out of choice. This is the start of a very long road. I want to cry, but I can't get the tears out. I only wish that this had happened 10 years ago. I'm angry. I feel really angry. It feels like I've been wandering alone in the dark. I finally found the key and the door has opened. Who says people don't do metaphor? I will need someone to help me now. I've wandered on my own. This is the root of my isolation and why I am so profoundly alone. I was born different and now I know why. I kind of expected it. It's an emotional blow. It's overwhelming hearing it officially. This was a really interesting one. I feel like I've been hit by a double-decker bus. In fact, I'm happy. I've been looking forward to coming to this appointment. I'm a bit numb. I wish I had done this, I don't know how many years ago. It will lead to understanding and not punishing. The next one is a child that I diagnosed, and when I told him the diagnosis, he cheered and said it was completely fine, and then said, finally. It was what I was expecting. I had the fear of walking away with no diagnosis. What am I then? Who am I? Some of you that have been diagnosed by me will know that I hand out this curve, which is a curve to try and explain some of our emotional reactions and responses to any transition, to anything that requires us to learn new behaviours, moving house, a bereavement and so on. And a diagnosis is a transition. And some people go through all of these emotions, some people just some. So sometimes people are shocked and overwhelmed. Sometimes people come back and say, actually, you're wrong, you didn't get it right, I've not got this diagnosis. Some people then feel they do want to change and identify with it, but they can't. Some people hit rock bottom and they may stay there quite a long while. And then people move up to try and integrate meaning into their life and incorporating it into their life. And the book that Luke has recently co-edited, The 9 Degrees of Autism, talks about people moving through a process and achieving what some of you might have heard of from Maslow's hierarchy, where he talks about the sort of different levels from knowing who we are to full acceptance. I totally accept the power, the enormous power that I hold when people walk into my clinic room. I have the power to say yes or no. And whilst that doesn't sit very comfortably with me, I try and take it seriously.
So I definitely have some yes answers here. Because, well, my upbringing was really very difficult, and then it was also traumatizing, and then I moved on into a traumatizing relationship with a very paranoid person and narcissist. And from then I moved on into a cult, and I stayed there for about 10 years, and then I moved into another cult belief system, which was the New Age. And the problem is, once you start to believe in weird shit, then it's very easy to get paranoid about stuff. So you have to peel away all those layers of brainwashing and weird beliefs until you have a construct of beliefs that make you rather rational and logical, and then you also get less paranoid about stuff. That's at least my own experience. And some of the paranoia is actually based on reality. So my dad, he grew up in communism, and they were persecuted when saying the wrong things. You could actually be killed for being against the Communist Party. That's no joke. And there are governments that are really spying on their citizens. That's also not conspiracy. And then there is exposure anxiety. This is well explained here in this quiz.
Have you been accused of often being self-centered, selfish, inconsiderate, just because you were either unaware of the expectations or your needs for physical comfort, like to be comfortable yourself, your needs overrode what it was that was expected of you? And so here's some situations that I'm talking about. Autistics, we have the tendency to lean towards being quite overloaded and overwhelmed easily, especially with our senses. We get sensory overload. So we can show up somewhere and it's a lot brighter than we expected. It's louder, there's more people. There's something that's going to happen that we didn't expect. And so what happens is, when the unexpected happens, sorry for all the words, happens. When the unexpected happens to an autistic, we run into fight or flight really easily. And so we're gonna kind of shut down and have to get into self-preservation mode. What this looks like to other people is like you're all of a sudden not caring about them, like they don't exist, like their needs don't matter. They feel very disrespected, they feel very dismissed and invalidated, and like you're just a big selfish jerk. But what actually is happening, and here's where we're going to get to the heart of the matter on number 6. The heart of the matter is we're not trying to be self-centered and selfish and inconsiderate. We are petrified and we don't know how to get out of the situation in a way that protects us and considers your needs at the same time. And so what we have to do is we have to shut off our empathy and compassion for you for the moment to protect ourselves from literally going insane because we're so overwhelmed or we're so terrified of the sudden dynamic that we find ourselves in. And so it's not that we don't care about you. It's that fight or flight kicks in, and when fight or flight kicks in, it's really hard to be considerate of others. So have you been accused of things like this? But this is really what was going on. Fight or flight kicked in, and your natural instincts took over, which made you appear to be self-centered, inconsiderate, selfish.
Which sometimes feels like being paranoid. So I'm sometimes even afraid to open the letterbox because something unpleasant could be in it. Or when somebody calls me on the cell phone, it creates anxiety because I never know what they want, and usually it's unpleasant, it's triggering, it's overwhelming. And how Donna Williams describes it, when bridges are threatening, then sometimes you don't want any bridges.
I'm judged for being me, but then trying hard to get it right for other people at the same time and still getting it wrong. I think that's the general experience. Failure really devastates some people.
Which actually for me, I almost wanted a shield, because I could feel it.
And I think that's there's a type of empathy that people talk about, movement empathy, where it almost does. It's a brilliant example and description of it, where it's sort of like overwhelming and actually affects you physically.
So I've always thought that is what empathy was. If I feel someone else, or what I perceive as someone else's suffering, that's me empathising with them. A bit like when you said about if someone is falling in water, then, let me just go back a step. My understanding was that empathy, the pathy part came from the Greek, pathos, which is to suffer. So empathy was the suffering with someone. So falling in the water, if they're drowning, to sympathise is stand on the bank and go, oh, that's terrible. Empathising is to jump in and suffer with them. So that was how I'd understood it. Rightly or wrongly, that's just how I understood it.
It's the opposite way around.
Ah, right. Because that's when I've been with people that I have felt I was empathising with, it hurts me. And that's what, or when I get sort of heightened anxiety because someone else is feeling it, and I'm aware that, oh, this is bad. Whereas if it's just a situation where I'll turn and go, well, let's try and fix it, that to me feels more like a sympathy thing. It's like, right, let's fix this. I know what to do.
Yeah.
And that has got me into a lot of trouble as well. But it's, that was just, I mean, like I say, I'm probably wrong and confused, but then that's me as well. But I just thought that the falling in water thing, and how you'd said it was useless if you were drowning with them,
Yeah.
that made total sense.
Yeah.
And with you talking about the waves coming over, that's how I think I'm empathising, is when I start drowning with someone.
But then I'd argue, see this bit about the process. So the process would then stop because you're both going under.
Yes.
Whereas and it's a high level skill being empathic. That you have to be able to absorb it. You have to resonate with that. Then you have to be able to detach yourself from that, but give back an empathic comment to that person that then they go, oh, they've got me. Then they come back to you, then you go back to them, which is why I think there's this myth that it exists. And one of the things that we would do after the session, so what we would do was a practical demonstration. If I would say something, that I would then give a practical example of something that I'd experienced. And I'd say, I'm now going to go around the room, I'm not, but with the training exercise, I'm now going to go around the room and ask each of you to make an empathic comment. And most people couldn't speak because I took a very serious example. Some people would start crying. It's no news to me. Other people would go, that must be really upsetting. I'm thinking, I've just told you something devastating about my life, and all you can say is, that sounds very upsetting. Hardly anyone got anywhere towards making an empathic comment, and that would happen every time we ran the course. It would happen again and again and again. And there were people there that were advanced practitioners who should have been clinically good at empathy, even if they weren't in real life. Useless. Because they went, oh yeah, when my mum died it was like this. I'm thinking, I don't give a toss what you feel about your mum. That's not what I said. So I don't think people are very good at it at all. And what I would then do is ask people to go away and look for empathy. Do they see it in the workplace? Do they see it in their social life? And invariably people would come back and go, saw quite a lot of sympathy. Empathy, not really. And so then those people were more questioning of what is empathy. And as I said before, the depth of discussion here has been much better than discussions I've had with neurotypical people, because I think autistic people are doing this constantly, trying to make sense, this model of the world, and how maybe your model is not resonating with somebody else's model. Autistic people are caring about it, and I think neurotypical people aren't. That's a huge generalisation, and of course there'll be, examples counteracting that. The other thing as well is that sometimes empathy can be quite dangerous. So the times I've come back to work where I've had something devastating happen to me, some of the people I work with are very empathic, and I've gone into work and said, I don't want any empathy whatsoever, please. Because if I got any empathy, I would have crashed. And so I actually don't want anyone to be empathic towards me or even sympathetic, because I'm here to do a job and I'm not here to think about this or feel about it. So actually sometimes if you're empathic in the wrong situation, you can undo somebody in a way that's not very helpful. So I think sometimes autistic people stepping back going, oh, I don't know what to do here, it might be a very thoughtful thing. And maybe sometimes doing nothing is the right thing.
Because you expect that people will constantly overwhelm you and stress you out by their demands and by just being neurotypical and not knowing about how quickly you get overwhelmed. And this is coming from experience. You have lived through it again and again, and it was traumatizing to some point. So of course you have become very careful with whom you want to interact, and you prefer to actually have a lot of solitude because of that. Because then not much can trigger you. So Donna Williams has written a lot about this, and it helped me understand some of what I am experiencing. Phases of exposure anxiety. People with chronic exposure anxiety are sometimes expressive if left to their own devices, albeit in a self-directed way. You might catch them wandering about in the dawn before everyone else is awake, or making all kinds of experiments and creations as soon as you are out of the house. Why can someone with exposure anxiety be expressively and naturally laughing out loud in the back garden, but somehow stuck, compliant, or performing when in front of others?
One-to-one. All sorts of hypotheses as why that might be the case. I suspect it's because the women have finally said, I've had enough, I'm going to get this diagnosed myself. So we've still not got that right.